It was 7:12 a.m. when my wife set a mug of coffee beside me and said 5 words that scared me more than any diagnosis. "You're disappearing." I'm 78 years old, and I'm about to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Not because it's shocking, but because deep down you might already feel it happening to you. I used to think getting older meant slowing down, resting, taking it easy. But that's not what happened. I didn't slow down. I stopped, and something inside me started dying. I was a physician. 45 years in hospitals and clinics, delivered babies, closed up wounds, sat beside families as machines went quiet. I lived by the clock. Morning rounds, afternoon consults, evening calls. Everything had a time. Everything had a reason. And then I retired. At first, people congratulated me, said I deserved it, said I'd earned my rest. But nobody told me what comes next. Nobody told me about the mornings. The first few weeks I tried to enjoy it. Slept in, read the paper slowly, took long breakfasts. But the stillness wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. No pages to turn in a chart. No names to call in a waiting room. No one needing me. No one waiting for me. I remember waking up one morning, sun already high, house quiet. I lay there staring at the ceiling for an hour. No appointments, no schedule, just silence. Eventually I reached for my phone and started scrolling. News, politics, disasters. The glow of the screen lit up my face but did nothing for my mind. By the time I got out of bed, I was already tired. Linda started noticing one morning. She looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You're disappearing." She was right. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't ill. But something was fading. That's when it hit me. The real damage of retirement wasn't the loss of work. It was the loss of rhythm. For decades, I believed something that turned out to be a lie. Purpose comes from achievement. It sounds noble, even true. Work hard, do good, be needed. I lived by it, and for a while, it worked. I had patience, responsibilities, a name on the door. But when the pager stopped buzzing, when there were no more calls in the night, when no one needed my signature, the lie fell apart. Achievement can fill your calendar. It can build your reputation. But it can't fill your soul when the applause stops. What I didn't realize is that I'd built my whole identity around being useful. I didn't know how to just be. The pattern started quietly. I began staying in pajamas longer. I skipped shaving some days. Told myself it didn't matter, no one was coming over. Linda would make breakfast and I'd barely taste it. Sometimes I wouldn't speak a full sentence until afternoon. I stopped making plans. When friends called, I said I was tired. When invitations came, I said maybe next time. Then the invitations stopped coming. I'd sit on the couch, scrolling headlines I couldn't do anything about, drinking coffee that went cold before I finished it. And every night I'd tell myself, tomorrow I'll do something different. But tomorrow came, and I did the same thing. This wasn't laziness. It was a slow spiritual erosion. The loss of direction doesn't always look like crisis. Sometimes it looks like a man sitting still, every day a little dimmer than the last. And the worst part, no one notices at first, not even you. Until one morning you look in the mirror and realize you're still alive, but you're not really living. That's where I was. A man with clean clothes and nowhere to go. A full fridge and no appetite. A loving wife and nothing left to say. It crept in quietly. I didn't decide to withdraw. I just stopped showing up first in small ways, then all the way. Mornings became the worst part of my day. I'd wake up already behind on a life I wasn't even living. I didn't tell anyone. That's not how men like me were raised. I'm supposed to be the one who helps, not the one who needs help. So I kept the mask on. When neighbors asked how retirement was, I'd smile and say, "Wonderful," slowing down a bit. Then I'd go home and sit in silence for hours. Even Linda, who knows me better than anyone, didn't press. But I saw her watching me. Her eyes lingered longer. Her questions got softer. Then, one morning, it happened. I was in the living room, hunched over my phone. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. That cold, early light was leaking through the blinds. Blue and tired. Linda walked in quietly. I didn't hear her at first. She stood across from me, holding 2 mugs of coffee. I didn't look up. I heard her set one down on the table beside me. Porcelain on wood. Then she said it. "You're disappearing." Her voice was calm, not angry, not even sad, just quiet. I looked up. Steam curled in the cold air between us. I didn't respond. Couldn't. I stared at her, at the soft line between her eyebrows, at the gray in her hair, now more silver than not, and I realized I hadn't really looked at her in weeks. I reached for the coffee she set down. My hand was shaking a little. The cup was warm, too warm. I flinched and pulled back. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything she could have said. I should have apologized. I should have promised to do better. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching the steam rise and disappear. The only sound in the room was the soft tick of the clock on the wall, and I felt like a ghost in my own life. That's the thing people don't understand about regret. It doesn't always come from a big mistake. Sometimes it grows in quiet spaces, in the mornings you waste, in the coffee you don't taste, in the people you stop seeing. And by the time you realize it's happening, you're already halfway gone. That morning should have been a turning point. But it wasn't, because when you're fading, even your wake-up calls can feel distant. You register them, but they don't reach your hands, your feet, your habits. The next few weeks pass the same way. Wake up late. Scroll the news. Move through the day like fog. Then one Wednesday I woke up before Linda, not out of energy, just insomnia. I went downstairs, brewed coffee, and sat in the kitchen. There was a quiet ticking from our old wall clock, the wooden one we've had since the 80s. The house felt too big. Linda walked in, paused at the doorway and said, "You used to love mornings." Not accusing, not bitter, just remembering out loud. I looked down at the mug in my hands. The coffee had barely been touched. It was going cold again. She sat across from me. We didn't speak for 20 minutes. Just the sound of the clock marking each second we weren't filling. I looked at her, and I saw it, that look people have when they realize they've lost someone. Not to death, but to distance. And in that moment, something broke. I saw what I was doing to both of us. I was still here, technically, but I was erasing myself, not in one dramatic gesture, but in tiny choices, in unspoken mornings, in the shrinking of presence. That's when I understood something I wish I'd learned decades ago. Purpose isn't found in what you accomplish. It's found in how you show up. And if you're listening to this right now alone, at night, phone in your hand, lights off in your room, I need you to hear this. This is how it starts. Not with a crisis, not with a loss, but with a quiet surrender to the idea that your life no longer needs direction. You're not too old. You're not too busy. You're not too late. But you are choosing. Every day, every morning. So here's your line in the sand. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, do this one small ritual. Just the first hour. 1 minute, sit up. Feet on the floor. 10 slow breaths. 3 minutes. Write one sentence on a piece of paper. Today, I will show up by 10 minutes. Step into daylight. Walk to the end of the street. No headphones. 30 minutes. Do one finishable task that proves you're back in your life. Make the bed. Wash the dishes. Call one friend. Book one appointment. Then drink your coffee while it's still warm. Because if you don't, if you keep existing on autopilot one day, someone you love will look at you across a quiet table, and they won't see you anymore. They'll see your outline, and that will be all that's left. If this hit you, don't scroll away. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. I'm going to show you how to rebuild rhythm in simple human steps, one morning at a time.